Welcome to Real News. I'm Mark Steiner. Great to have you all with us. Approximately 22% of the 9 million Israeli citizens are non-Jews. The majority of those are Palestinians. They do have representation in the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, but that representation has come under increasing pressure from Israeli leaders. When they reprimanded one member and worked to silence Palestinian members of Knesset in another event, to the fracturing of the united front of Palestinian Israelis they have with one another and their Jewish allies. Why fracturing? Well, we'll talk about that. On the one hand, Palestinian citizens of Israel use Knesset to fight against institutional racism and discrimination. On the other hand, the Israeli government uses the fact that Palestinians sit in the Knesset to prove that non-Jews have the right to vote and that Israel is truly a democratic country. In 2015, Israel increased the minimum percentage for a party to hold seats in the Knesset to 3.25% of the vote. Now, that political maneuver forced the three so-called Arab parties to join forces, creating a united front, in essence, called the Joint List. The Joint List is comprised of three very different parties: the left-wing Progressive Party, Hadash, the National Palestinian Balad Party, and the Islamic Ra'am Party, which itself was unified with Ta'al under the leadership of Ahmed Tibi. So the chairman of the Joint List, Knesset member Ayman Uda, spoke to Israeli television just 3 weeks ago and had this to say.
Regarding the Joint List, I am hoping that we will stay united, including Ahmed Tibi. We want him. We want all the components. Why? We believe it is a very important party, the third in size, in the first time in history, 13 seats. By the way, the polls say that we will not just get 13, but that for the first time we will be the second biggest party, not the third in the Knesset. If, prior to the law of the nation, there was an added value to our unity, then certainly after the law of the nation, this is so important to run together. We need political unity from all sides, and I will call upon them, and we will sit and negotiate, and I hope we'll stay together.
One of the three parties comprising the Joint List, Ra'am Ta'al, as I said, under the leadership of Ahmed Tibi, decided to split off from the Joint List and run on its own. So one really has to ask the question that given the dramatic rise of the ever more extreme right in Israeli politics, is this the right time for parties that stand to the left and that are engaged in the fight for minority rights to really split? Well, we're now joined by Israeli Knesset member Dov Hanin. And Dov Hanin is a fascinating political figure in Israeli politics. He's a lawyer, environmental activist. He studied the law, as I said, has a PhD in political science from Tel Aviv University, a postdoc work at Oxford University on the relationship between social and environmental movements and questions. And he joined the Hadash party in Israel, which then became part of the Joint List. He's now served 13 years as a member of the Knesset. And although he was constantly in the opposition, he amazingly enough passed more laws than any other member of the Knesset. How did he do that? We're going to find out. Hanin is the only Jewish member who is part of the Joint List. And he recently announced that he will retire from the parliament, but and not participate in these elections coming up as a candidate, but will continue his work as an activist. And welcome. Good to have you with us.
Hello. Good evening.
So let's just jump into this. I'm curious about a couple of things. I mean, the Hadash party. Explain to our viewers a bit about who the Hadash party is on the left, where they come from, how they've been doing this fight in the Knesset, and why you're the only Jewish member and what that means.
Well, actually, Hadash is a movement that is based on three basic principles. The first principle is socialist values. The second principle is our struggle to achieve a just and comprehensive peace between Israel and the Palestinians, between Israel and the Arab world. We would like to see this peace being achieved on the basis of two states, with the 4 of June 1967 border as the border between these two states. And third very important principle of Hadash is our belief in a joint Jewish-Arab political movement, joint Jewish-Arab political struggle. And I joined Hadash because I, support these three very important principles. But as you said, back in 2015, when the right-wing government raised the electoral threshold, the number of votes needed in order to enter Israeli Knesset, our movement, Hadash, was forced to join forces with other political movements or parties based on the Arab population in order to stay alive, So the real reason why the joint list was created was not, a gradual rapprochement between the various parties, but actually the political need of all these movements, all these parties to stay alive with the new higher electoral threshold.
So what is it about Hadash, or is it the joint list, where at least one member has to be a Jewish member? If that's a very conscious decision on the part of Hadash?
Well, in Hadash we have internal democratic elections. I was elected in secret ballot all the times. Mm-hmm. But we would like our movement to be a Jewish Arab movement, and therefore we would like also our faction in the Knesset to be Jewish Arab. We have 4 Knesset members. I'm the only Jewish member of the Knesset faction of Hadash. But as a movement, we have activists, both coming from the Jewish population and from the Arabic minority inside Israel.
So I think we'd all be very curious to find out how you, who have been vilified by a number of people in parliament and in Israeli politics, and were so successful as a Knesset member in making coalitions to pass laws around the environment especially, and how you could pull that off, given that you're a member of Hadash, and how that is many people vilify that as party as well. And I'm just, so how did you do that? I mean, how do you end up becoming so effective, given the politics that you represent?
How much time do you have? But as a matter of fact, you are right. Since being elected to the Knesset, I was able to pass more than 100 different laws that I initiated, and that are now a part and parcel of Israeli Book of Laws. These are environmental laws, social laws, feminist laws, laws defending the homosexual communities, laws defending human rights, including the rights of prisoners in Israeli prisons. So I'm, very satisfied with my legislation. To try to answer you very quickly, being a Knesset member from the opposition in Israel is hard. It's a difficult profession. We should do it very, very professionally, and we should use all the opportunities that arise from time to time because of the internal contradictions in the political camp of the governing parties. We should learn to find ways to use all the cracks in the systems.
So it is amazing to me. I mean, given that you have been vilified as some people even called you a terrorist and a traitor and more. This one very quick question. I'm just curious. I mean, how does it feel to sit in a parliament when you know you're on the outside, especially more increasingly so since the right has become so much more powerful in Israel? It must be a very difficult thing to kind of go through.
Well, serving in the Knesset is indeed very difficult for someone like me who, opposed the governing coalition very, very sharply. But since being elected to the Knesset, I always say to myself that I serve in the Knesset not only to condemn the present situation, but to try also to change it. Condemning the government is very, very important, of course, and very much needed in Israel, but it is not enough. we should use the possibilities we have as Knesset members in order to press for concrete changes that will make the practical lives of people in Israel a bit less difficult.
Well, I mean, in the years you've served in the parliament, and despite your real fierce opposition from others, the Nakba law was passed that silenced the commemoration of the ethnic cleansing that took place of Palestinians in 1948. The Boycott law, which criminalized all those who support the boycott movement against Israel, BDS. And most recently, the law of the nation, which was passed that seemed to enshrine, and some would argue, like an apartheid political system in Israel. And many Palestinians believe that participating in these elections now are no longer worthwhile. And even one of your main partners has pulled out of the coalition in the joint list. And so what does that portend for the future political struggle from your perspective in Israel when there's kind of a splintering of the joint list and all these recent laws have been passed? I mean, what do you think unfolds here?
Well, as you said, the Knesset unfortunately passed very, very bad laws, but you should know that we were able to stop another set of very, very difficult laws. So they were able to pass some laws, but they failed to pass some other legislation which were also very dangerous. So being at the Knesset is not fruitless. We are struggling very hard. Not always we succeed. Unfortunately, there are times like in the new law of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, where we fail, unfortunately. But we do not fail always. There are also times, many times, where we are able, through cooperation with other forces, to stop difficult and very, very harmful legislation being put forward by the right-wing government in Israel. Therefore, to call the Arab population in Israel to boycott the elections is to give a big present to the Israeli right wing. Because, Arab population in Israel is a minority. This minority cannot really change the situation by itself. But, however, it is not possible to change the situation for the better in Israel without the political force of the Arabic minority in Israel. Without the Arabic minority in Israel, the right-wing forces in Israel will be in permanent majority. Therefore, what we call the Arab population in Israel is to come to vote en masse and to vote against the right wing, to support us, to support other democratic forces in order to put their political weight behind the forces of change in Israel.
So, but just finally, very quickly here, I mean, so if the party backs out of the joint list, which it said is doing, can the joint list actually reach the threshold to have members in parliament and be significant if that split takes place?
I do hope that the party that left the joint list will rejoin it. I think that, as I told you, there are 4 different parties with huge differences between them. And therefore, it is very natural for each party to try to improve its position vis-à-vis the other parties in the joint list. I do hope that with the elections coming nearer, all the forces, all the parties will reconsider. And I do hope that also this party of Dr. Ahmed Tibi will rejoin the joint list in order to make sure that no Arab and progressive votes will, be lost in these elections.
But you're not running again. You're not standing for the Knesset.
I'm not standing again for the Knesset. And as I told you, I come out of the Knesset with many achievements. But I'm really worried about the general direction of Israeli society, and I would like to focus on work in the ground, on work with people to change the general direction of Israeli public opinion. And in order to focus on this very, very important job, I would like to, not to spend all the time in the legislation and in the committees of the Knesset.
Well, Dov Hanin, this has been a pleasure to talk with you. I look forward to doing it again around the elections and even more. Thank you for your work, and thank you for joining us here at Real News today.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Mark Steiner here for the Real News Network. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care.